Good evening. Before we begin, talking about residential childcare regulations versus contracts, this portion is to coincide with Emergency Behavior Intervention Training Part 2. None of the content that we're about to cover on this portion is covered on your test, so don't freak out as we're going through this material and be looking through your test questions and thinking you're missing something, because you're not. This is an opportunity for us to explain and give you a well-rounded knowledge of what the difference is between residential childcare regulations versus CPS contract standards and the way in which Pathways is regulated and the rules that you have to follow. So a little bit about residential childcare regulations. RCCR was which we commonly refer to it. You may have previously heard us refer to this as RCCL, Residential Childcare Licensing. About a year or so ago, they changed this label, and it is now Residential Childcare Regulations, which falls under the Health and Human Services Commission. RCCR is a branch of the Health and Human Services Commission, which oversees and regulates Pathways. They have a list of regulations called minimum standards, or commonly referred to as licensing standards. As an applicant with Pathways or a licensed foster parent, when you log into the Family Web through your extended reach portal, if you scroll all the way down on the main page on the right-hand side, you have actually access to minimum standards, about 459 pages of rules as of the last update. So those are available to you if you ever want to go through and start reading those. But those are the rules in which Pathways is held accountable. Now, RCCR inspections are handled in three different ways that they monitor and regulate Pathways. The first one we're going to talk about is random office visits. Pathways is on a one-time-a-year monitoring program. RCCR makes unannounced visits to Pathways offices across the state. They review a percentage of foster parent files and child files. Now, we never know when RCCR is coming to our office. It's a surprise visit. So when they do show up, they ask us to print out all of our families, all of our children in a spreadsheet, and then they go through and they systematically pick families and children. Usually the family files that they select are associated with the children's files that they select as well. So they go through, they pick them, and then we have to give them access to those files. As they start going through those files and reading them, if there's things missing in the files that are mandatory, like your training, they're going to look at those things. And the more things that are expired or missing, that agency will begin to be cited or receive a deficiency by residential childcare regulations. Now, citing a standard and receiving a deficiency is really the same thing. We just kind of use that word interchangeably, but it's the same meaning. As they're going through, they're going to look for things with an expiration date. So that could be your CPR first aid training, fire inspections, health inspections, your fire extinguisher, pet vaccinations, auto insurance, homeowners or renters insurance. Anything with an expiration date is what they're going to be looking for as well. Now, when they go to the child's file, they're going to be looking for a lot of those things too. They're going to look and see, are their medicals and dentals up to date? Did they complete that 3 and 30, that 3-day medical screening, 30-day physical exam, and 30-day CANS assessment on a child 3 and older? They will look at your foster parent notes, and are they completed? Your medication logs that you complete on a monthly basis. Any medical dental report forms, that could be psychiatry, vision and hearing screening, CANS assessment, any psychiatry, I think I said that, any of those types of things, they're going to be looking to make sure that that medical dental report form is completed. So as they go through that child's file, there's also things in there that CPS has to give to us, like court orders and service plans and things of that nature. So again, if those things are missing or delinquent, they will then start citing that agency for those items. Pathways does really well with our office inspections. We usually get 100% compliance on them, which is a big pat on the back to our families and our staff for doing a really good job in keeping up to date with those things. So that's the random office visit. Then we have what are called MAH inspections, MAH. That stands for Monitoring Agency Home. So with this monitoring visit, once you become a licensed foster parent, each month, RCCR will randomly select a foster home for sampling or referred to as a MAH inspection. Just said that. I got ahead of myself. They will schedule with the family to come to the home and conduct a walkthrough of the home and ask a series of questions about pathways. So when they do come, they usually call ahead. They request from Pathways your home study, training hours, floor plan, pet vaccinations. There's very set things that they ask for. Then they will call you to set up that appointment. They work around your schedule. You're not going to be required to take time off of work or anything. They'll come in the evenings. They'll come on a Saturday, whatever's conducive to your schedule. When they do come, expect about an hour-long visit. Depending on how chatty you may be and how chatty they may be, or how large your family may be. They will do a complete walkthrough of the home, and they will ask to see things like where your medications are stored and locked, if chemicals are locked or stored out of the reach of children, your fire extinguishers, any of those types of things. They'll flush toilets, check hot and cold running water. They'll ask you a series of questions about pathways. When was the last time we were in your home? If you have a crisis, how quickly did we respond? And anything pertaining to the child. So again, we usually get 100% on our monitoring visits as well. Our families are equipped and ready. Do make sure that you have access to the children's records, like their Pathways service plan, placement documents. They may ask to see those different types of things for the child. So that's the monitoring visit. And then lastly, the way that we're regulated also is through investigations. Now, investigations happen to our best families. It can happen to anyone. Sometimes we use the analogy, it's not if you ever receive an investigation, it's when you receive an investigation. Investigations, we say, don't take it personal. It is personal. There's kind of an attack on your character and your ability to parent. So it is a little bit personal. But when an investigation happens, usually they contact Pathways first to collect documents and then call the foster parents. By law, we cannot call and tell you that you have an investigation on your home. We have to allow RCCR to make that contact first. And they will come out and conduct that investigation. The majority of the time is nothing to worry about. Anybody can call in an investigation. A lot of times it may be the school or the daycare because they are state mandated reporters. If that child tells them they didn't have dinner last night in your home, by law, they have to report that to the statewide hotline saying that that child is being neglected. When in terms that child may have been using it as a manipulative technique to try to get more food or snacks from the teacher. A lot of times too, this also comes from biological parents. During a home visit, a family visit, if there's a mark or a bruise on the child, they may call it in. And sometimes they're doing that to divert the attention from themselves and make it look like they didn't do anything wrong and now somebody else is doing the same thing that they did. It's not really the same scenario, that's happening there. But by law, they have to come out and do that investigation just to show they're going through the motions, that child is safe, and everything in your home is in compliance. Now, vast majority of the times our investigations are ruled out. If they're going to catch us on something, they usually catch us on something that is a licensing compliance regulation. When they come to the home, if your CPR is expired, your fire extinguisher was expired, something like that is where they may catch us, is more on a compliance related thing, more so than a family actually harming a child. So, but that is another way that we are monitored and regulated by residential child care regulations. So those are the three ways that they monitor and regulate child placing agencies in Texas. Now, we also, we are licensed with residential child care licensing, or regulations rather, I'm sorry. And then we also have a contract, a CPS contract, that allows us to place CPS children in our foster homes. And so we have regulations we follow by that. So Pathways has a contract with CPS to place children who are in state conservatorship in our foster homes. CPS contract regulations are a separate set of regulations that Pathways must follow in addition to residential child care licensing. CPS falls under the Department of Family and Protective Services, whereas I said earlier, residential child care regulations falls under the Health and Human Services Commissions. So two different state entities there. They review these reviews are actually held on an annual basis. So one of the big things we kind of want to talk about tonight when we're looking at contract standards, and with contract standards, these do hold monetary penalties. We can refer to them as fines if that kind of helps you to understand it a little bit better. So one of these is background checks. So Pathways must maintain background checks on a variety of people who have contact with children. Now, this could be anybody that resides in your home 14 years or older. If you have a 13-year-old child that is turning 14, our system is set up that 60 days prior to that 14th birthday, we receive an alert so that we can start collecting the release of information, the birth certificate, the social security card. We can run the background check, schedule the child for FBI fingerprinting, and then those results are completed by the time the child is actually turning 14 years old. This could be anybody moving into your home. If you have a relative moving in with you, a roommate, your adult child is graduating college and they're going to move home until they can get a job. Any of those types of scenarios, anybody in the home 14 and older does have to have that FBI background check. Frequent visitors. A frequent visitor is a person who visits the home 2 or more times per month. Now, this does not require an FBI background check as long as the person has resided in Texas in the last 5 years. Now, if this person has lived in California and they moved here 2 years ago, now we have to do an FBI background check on a frequent visitor. The vast majority of the time, our frequent visitors are people that reside in Texas and they do not require an FBI background check. Now, frequent visitors could be a variety of people. That could be your next door neighbor that comes over every day and has a cup of coffee and talks about their day. This could be friends, family members, adult children that come by your home. And what you have to remember is we don't license you as a foster parent. We're licensing your home as a foster home. You actually will have a state license that you receive once you become licensed as a foster parent that you have to post in your home. Anybody that comes in and out of your licensed facility, your home, we start having to have background checks on. We have to monitor and regulate them. If you did Bible study at your house every Wednesday night, we have to have background checks on those people that come to your house every Wednesday night for Bible study. If your family members come over every Sunday for Sunday dinner, we have to have background checks on your family members that come over every Sunday for dinner. Now, this does not pertain to people that are coming to provide a service. If your kitchen sink flooded and a plumber comes to work on your sink, that person does not require an FBI background check. The people that mow your lawn, that work on your swimming pool, those people do not require FBI fingerprints. This is more that frequent and regular, 2 or more times a month coming to your home. So you kind of start to have to thinking about who are those people that may be coming in and out of your home. This is we have lots of families, lots of frequent and regular visitors that are run across the state. Our families do a really good job of pretty much keeping us comprised of that. So kind of think about that as you're going through this process now. Anybody, again, for that frequent visitor, it's 14 and older. So if you have a niece and nephew that come over every other weekend to spend time with you and they're 14 and 15 years old, that would be a frequent and regular visitor, even though they're 14 and 15 years old. So do that diligence in starting to think about those different types of things. Support providers. A support provider comes in 3 different categories. There's babysitters, respite providers, and true caregivers. A babysitter is somebody that watches that child 72 hours or less. A respite provider watches that child more than 72 hours, less than 17 days, I think it is. And then a caregiver is somebody that helps on a daily basis. This would be like a nanny or somebody that truly helps on a daily basis. They get the child off the bus, get them started on homework until you get home from work, and then you take over. That would be considered a caregiver. So there's different criterias for those in regards to training. Check with your home developer or your family specialist on those requirements. Now, anyone that's going to be left alone with a child for any length of time requires an FBI background check. Even if your friends are over, that we have a frequent and regular background check on, frequent and regular visitor background check, and you say, I need to run to CVS, HEB, Kroger's, Walmart to pick up medication from the pharmacy. I'm going to be gone 10 minutes. I'll be right back. That person has to have an FBI background check to be left alone with that child. So we want to make sure that that is in place. We get the question a lot, what if my best friend, church member, next door neighbor is a licensed foster parent with another agency? That's wonderful. We want you to be able to use each other as resources because there's a lot of hoops to jump through. And if somebody's already licensed, by all means, we want you to be able to utilize them as well. We are responsible for our own background checks. What that means is we still have to gather a background check release from them, their driver's license and social security card for us to run their background check. Their background will automatically process since they're a licensed family with another agency. The reason for that is, let's say, for instance, a person was arrested for assault or DWI, any of those types of things. If that person has a background check on file with Pathways, within 24 hours, we're going to be contacted by residential child care regulations telling us, is this a current foster parent? We may have to put a safety plan in place for the child in the home, depending on the severity of the arrest. It may be removing the child from the home until that criminal charge is handled. So the same thing with babysitters, even though they're licensed with another agency, we are responsible for our own background checks so that we would receive those same alerts that agency would. We would call you and say, hey, I can't tell you why, but you can't use your babysitter right now. But that's why we're responsible for those types of things. So please make sure, anybody that's going to be left alone with a child, we have to have those background checks in place. This carries a $500 financial penalty per incident. So this is where we really want to make sure we're getting this. Now, when licensing or residential child care regulations comes to your home and does your random sampling inspection, they may ask you, who's your frequent and regular visitors? Who are the people that come in and out of your home? Who are the people that help you with babysitting? They're going to write those people down, and then they're going to check and see if we have background checks on them. Now, they're not only going to ask you, they're going to ask the kids in casual conversation, different types of things like, tell me what you did last weekend. Oh, we went to the fair and the movies and to this and to that, and we did this on Sunday, and grandma and grandpa came over for dinner. Really? How often does grandma and grandpa come over? They come over every Sunday. So they're going to ask the kids. They're going to get them excited and talking, and they're going to start disclosing that information. So this is where it's important that we want to make sure we have those background checks in place. So with that babysitter, respite provider, and caregiver, it is an FBI background check. If they've lived out of the state of Texas in the last 5 years, we will also have to do a CPS background check in whatever state they resided in as well. Facility-initiated discharges. If a foster parent finds themselves in a situation where they can no longer parent a child, a 30-day discharge is required. Pathways is required to complete the Form 2109 requesting the discharge of a child. This is reviewed by the CPS Child Placement Unit staff to determine if it is an appropriate discharge notice. They do have the ability to reject a discharge request. So if you find yourself in a situation where this child is more than you're capable of parenting, they have become physically aggressive, they're a danger to themselves or others, or homicidal and suicidal ideation, they're self-harming, they have to be psychiatrically hospitalized, they're harming kids in the home, they're constantly running away, cruelty to animal issues. So we can understand why a child with pretty severe behavior issues may need may not meet that parenting need anymore that you're capable of meeting. So in this situation, you do have to put in a 30-day discharge. And when you do tell Pathways, I can no longer do this, this is the decision we've come to, there's a specific form that we fill out, the form 2109, and we submit that to the child placement unit in whatever region that you live in Texas. There's 11 regions in Texas. When we submit that, just because you told us 30 days notice, it doesn't start that day. We submit the notice. Once they approve the notice, then the 30 days start. So it starts from the date of their approval. You may tell us we turn everything in a timely basis. 3 days later, we receive the approval. That's when those 30 days start counting down. So if you find yourself in a situation that you really need a break from this child, get with us. But also, who is your designated emergency support? Who is the person that you're using for babysitting, respite care, and caregiver? That's the people you need to call and ask them, hey, is there any way you can take them on Friday when they get out of school, and then we will pick them up Sunday afternoon and bring them back home so that they can go back to school on Monday morning. So that way you give yourself a couple of days break, but no, 30 days is going to happen. There have been families that have said, I'm going to give my 30-day discharge today, but they need to be gone tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. The older the child is, the full 30 days it's probably going to take. If that child has a barrier to placement, large sibling groups, older children with medical needs or habilitative needs, it's going to take CPS longer to find placement for that child. So really keep those things in mind as you're going through this process, and know that it is 30-day notice. Children who are placed with Pathways must remain in their placement 84% of the time. So guys, when a family does turn in this discharge notice, Pathways does kind of get a strike against them. They get a little tally mark next to their name. When contracts comes to review our contract, we have to have 84% successful discharges. That means they met a permanency goal. They went home to mom and dad, they were unified, they went to grandma and grandpa, to relatives, they became adopted, whether you're adopting them or someone else is adopting them. If they're a teen and they graduated high school and they're discharging from the foster care system for independent living or to go to college, those are all successful discharges. An unsuccessful discharge is when a foster parent puts in notice on a child, the death of a child, which is our medically fragile children, even though they have a terminal diagnosis, when a child passes in care, it's still an unsuccessful discharge. A child that runs away, a child that goes to a psychiatric hospital that does not come back to your home, those are unsuccessful discharges. So it's important that we do choose families that are able to, we choose to partner with families that are able to fulfill that permanency goal for a child. If we see a family that starts putting in notice and then they want another child and they put in a notice on them and they want another child, I can tell you right now, you're not going to be fostering with Pathways much longer, because now you become a liability to our entire agency. We have 400 and some odd licensed foster families across the state. And so we've got to think of everybody as a whole. And that's something that we take into consideration. Children remain in their placements 2 or fewer times. If we did move a child from one foster home to another, we cannot continue to just move that child from Pathways foster home to Pathways foster home to Pathways foster home. So that would start counting against us. So kind of this is where if you're a 2-parent home, it's really being on the same page. If you're a true foster adopt family, if you're a kinship family on with this right now, you already have the child. They're yours. They're usually your relative. They're not going anywhere. But for a family that is choosing to foster or foster adopt a child that is unknown to them, it's important to have that open line of dialogue about what your parenting styles are, what you feel like you can and cannot parent, so that when we do call you with a child, it's a very exciting time, but we need you to make that logical, rational decision. How far are family visits? How often are family visits? What are this children's behaviors? Are they on medications? What has been their history of running away or school disruptions or any of those types of things? So we need to take all of that in consideration before you say yes. And when you say yes, we're holding you to that commitment to be able to foster that child. So kind of be logical and rational when you're making these decisions, even though we're saying you have 5 minutes to make this decision because we have to let CPS know and we're rushing you. It's better sometimes to err on the side of caution and go, you know what, there's just something about this that doesn't feel right. We're going to say no on this one, and we'll wait for the next phone call on another child. Never be afraid to tell us no. We would rather you say no than take a child that a month later you're saying, I can't do this. This child has to leave. So take all of those things into consideration while working through this. Outcome measures. Children are safe in care 100% of the time. If there was an investigation and that child truly was physically abused, sexually abused, neglected, neglectful supervision, abandonment, you would have a validated case of child abuse. And Pathways receives or not just Pathways, any child placing agency, residential facility, or shelter in Texas receives a $10,000 fine for that validated case of child abuse. So again, this is where we have to make sure the families we're choosing to partner with are going to follow the rules. They're going to nurture children, and we're all here for the best interest of the child. Healthy connections with caring family members are documented. In your foster parent notes, you'll see it's real easy. It has a whole little area that you can write down every time we have a family visit with mom and dad, but not just mom and dad. Also, it says on here, document good faith efforts to have contact with fictive kin. Fictive kin could be people that had a relationship with that child, like a church leader, a Boy Scout leader, a teacher, a baseball coach, a cheerleading coach, next door neighbor that they used to live by, anybody like that they had a pre-existing relationship with. We need to document those contacts. We also need to make sure that we're maintaining connections with siblings. 37% of children placed in foster care are not placed with their brothers and sisters. Per contract standards, any child that is in a 100-mile radius of their sibling, they have to have they have to have once a month face-to-face visits. If they're outside of that 100-mile radius, let's say one child's placed in Houston and the other child is placed in Dallas, they have to have twice a month telecommunication. So talking on the phone, FaceTime, any of those types of things to where they're seeing and talking to each other. And we want to make sure that we're not just counting a family visit at the CPS office as a visit with their brothers and sisters. Guys, can you imagine all of your childhood memories taking place in a government office while somebody sat and watched you? No. So this is where it's important to swap numbers with the other family members or foster parents so that we can attend Little League baseball games, cheerleading tournaments, piano lessons, dance recitals, birthday parties. Let's meet up at the park and have a picnic and let the kids play. Let's go to the movies. Let's take them all, somewhere and let them enjoy their time together. The zoo, the museum, whatever it may be, but have those visits so they can maintain that connection. Children benefit from routine recreational activities. Children 3 and older are supposed to be in a social or recreational activity. For young children, I know 3-year-olds are like, what can a 3-year-old do socially or recreationally? Story time at the library. That's teaching social skills and recreation. So we want to document those things that could be social or recreational. Again, any type of sports, those organized recreational activities like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, cheerleading, FFA, 4-H, drama. The older they get in school, they start getting more and more activities that they can be involved in. So we want to make sure that we're documenting those routine recreational activities. Basic living and social skills. We want to document any basic living, experiential, and life skills for children 14 and older. So it's really important that we're documenting what we're teaching them, how to live independently. Are they washing their clothes? Are they folding them and putting them away? Hygiene, that's just a basic life skill is hygiene. Are we starting to teach them how to cook and coupon and go shopping and make a food plan? We pick out a recipe to make. How do we put together our grocery list? How do we change a tire on the car or change the oil in the car? Any of those types of things. That is teaching them those experiential life skills. For a child who is 14 and older and has a source of income, we need to make sure they have a savings plan. Some children can work at 14 and older. There are some businesses out there that can hire them for a few hours a week. This could also be a child that starts mowing lawns in the neighborhood or walking people's pets for them or watching their home while they're out of town and letting their pets out and those types of things. For a child that is 18 to 22, with a source of income, again, we have to make sure they have a savings account or checking account because we're trying to teach them to money manage, pay bills, and live independently before they age out of the foster care system. A child can remain in foster care till the age of 22, as long as they are enrolled in school. So they are in high school. Once they graduate, they have to take at least 9 hours of college per semester, or they work 30 hours per week, and they can remain a foster child till the age of 22. A child placed in extended foster care 18 to 22 are considered their own medical consentor. So they have the ability to set up their own medical exams, dental exams, psychiatric appointments, and those different types of things. So we do have to notify them of that, but they do have the right to be their own medical consentor. With behavioral health, our children 0 to 3 have to be referred to ECI for evaluation. ECI stands for Early Childhood Intervention. They're going to come to the home and they evaluate the child to see if there's any deficits. Are there any things that this child needs, like occupational, speech, or physical therapy to help this child with muscle tone, speech, or their nervous system. Occupational therapy helps with the nervous system. Ages 3 and older must have a CANS assessment within 30 days of placement. And CANS stands for Child, Adolescent, Needs, and Strengths. It is an assessment for behavioral health for children 3 and older, and we have to do that within 30 days of placement. And in some situations in Texas, in our SSCC areas, that has to be done every 90 days. Ages 16 and older have a transition plan. Where are they going to go when they graduate high school? We have to start thinking about it now. Are they going to get their GED? Are they going to graduate high school? Are they going to go to college or technical school? Are they going to enter the workforce? What is our transition plan? How are we going to help that child to achieve those goals? Ensuring that all service plan goals are consistent among all providers so that when Pathways does our service plan, we're sharing that with CPS, the therapist, the psychiatrist, the doctor, and that all of our goals are the same. Children prescribed psychotropic medication must be seen by the treating physician every 90 days. If a dosage is changed or a new prescription is written, CPS and Pathways has to be notified immediately. We do have to have CPS authorization before we can fill the medication for a new medication or a change in medication. So please make a change in dosage as well, like we're increasing a dosage. So please make sure you're notifying us of that and that we're having CPS approve that before we fill it. Children 16 and older have the right to be their own medical consentor. We said that on that last slide as well. So at 16 and older, they do have that right to start being their own medical consentor. So those are some of the things we want you to be aware of. Those are things that do have cost associated, fines associated. If licensing came into your home and did an investigation, an unannounced monitoring inspection, and let's say you had a little bottle of Tylenol out, that could be up to a $2,000 financial penalty for Pathways. So again, this is why at our home visits, our Pathways family specialist will do what's called a home chart at every home visit. They're going to walk through your home. They're going to say, let me see your meds, your guns, your chemicals, fire extinguisher, pet vaccinations. We're going to make sure everything is current. We're going to flush your toilets, turn on your hot and cold running water. We have to look in every bedroom of the home. Yes, it's a little bit intrusive. We also have to make sure children are being safe. And the home environments are safe for them. So that home chart is going to be our best way of helping you to stay in compliance. We'll review with you who are frequent visitors coming to your home. Is there anybody new? Babysitters, are we still using the same babysitters or support providers? Or maybe somebody moved to Colorado and we're not using them anymore. We can close them out, you know. So it's just staying up to date on all those different types of things. Now, also, we not only have residential childcare regulations and contract standards, we also have Pathways policy. So here is Pathways policy. We reviewed this in Behavior Intervention Part 1. We're going to go through it again just to kind of go through a little bit more in detail. If you look on the 3rd page of our policy, we literally copied and pasted these out of state licensing regulations, minimum standards. So we hold ourselves to the same accountability as a state. So corporal punishment is caregivers may not use or threaten to use corporal punishment with any child in care. That means even though we know we can't spank them, we can't say, do it again, I'm going to bust your butt. You know, we cannot threaten the use of corporal discipline. Corporal punishment, the definition, is the infliction of physical pain on any part of the child's body as a means of controlling or managing the child's behavior. That could be twisting ears, thumping them, pinching them, swatting them on the butt, anything, any physical pain on any part of the body as a means of controlling or managing their behavior. So we cannot hit or spank a child with a hand or instrument. We cannot make the child do physical exercise, such as running laps or doing sit-ups and push-ups. And the thought process behind this is exercise can be an appropriate coping skill for that child. If we use it in a negative manner, making them do sit-ups, push-ups, run laps for misbehavior, we can put a negative connotation with something that could actually be healthy for them. So even though we cannot do that, if we have a child, let's say we have a family visit, and a lot of times we see anxiety come out in the form of nervous energy. They can't sit still. They can't stop talking. They're climbing the walls. It is perfectly acceptable for us to say, hey, buddy, let's walk down to the park so that you can play on the jungle gym, the slide, the swings, and then we'll come home. Or let's go ride our bikes. Let's go skateboard. Let's go play some basketball. That's teaching that child a healthy coping skill to deal with that anxiety and nervous energy that they're feeling right now. So that's acceptable. We just cannot use it as a disciplinary measure. Now at school, if the PE coach, athletics coach makes them run bleachers or laps, they're not the parent. They can do that. If you are the Little League baseball coach, you still cannot do it. You are still in the capacity of a parent. I just said that, hold a physical position such as kneeling or squatting. Ever heard of kneeling on rice? We cannot make a child kneel on rice. We cannot make them hold a physical position, such as standing in timeout with their arms out to their sides, or putting phone books in their hands so their hands get so heavy they can't hold their arms up. That would be holding that physical position, or a squat position until their legs start shaking. We cannot do any unproductive work. If you look there is a whole definition for unproductive work. It serves no purpose except to demean or humiliate the child. Examples of this would be moving rocks from one side of the yard and back again, digging a hole and filling it back up. Writing sentences. I will not kick the dog. I will not kick the dog. I will not kick the dog. That's considered unproductive. We cannot do those things. Now, what we could do, especially with older kids, is we could have a writing assignment, and they could write what they did wrong, why it was wrong, and how they will do it differently in the future, so that we're helping with that left brain, that logic and reasoning. If that child is confronted with the same situation again, Hopefully it will help with the rationalization of the brain, and they can pull off of that writing assignment about what they did wrong, how they could do it differently in the future, and make that better choice when that situation happens. So that would be a writing assignment. Other things on this list: any harsh, cruel, unusual, unnecessary, demeaning, or humiliating punishment, anything that would demean or humiliate the child. Years ago, there was a foster parent that would, she had teenage girls and she had a bedwetter, a 17-year-old girl that was a bedwetter, and they had plastic mattresses. She made her take the mattress in front of the house to wash it and scrub it because she thought with the neighbors driving by and seeing her, it would embarrass her and she would stop doing that. That wasn't a misbehavior. That was not of a defiant will. So we cannot demean or humiliate for those types of things. Denial of mail or visit with their families. It is a child's right to have contact with their family members. If, let's say we're going to have a visit on Saturday at CC's Pizza. We're going to let all the kids get together. They're in different foster homes so they can see each other, have lunch, play. And our child has been bad all week long. We can't tell our child, because of your behavior, you're not going to go see your brothers and sisters. Guys, they still have to go. We can put consequences around the situation. When we get to CC's Pizza, or not CC's, what is the one with all the games, like Dave and Buster's or something like that? So when we get there, we're going to sit down and we're going to have lunch. And your consequence is you're going to park your butt in the seat. You're going to visit with your brothers and sisters, and you're going to have that time with them. And then we're going to go home. You cannot go play video games because that's a consequence of your behavior. Or you can get up and you can run around and play with your brothers and sisters, but we're not giving you money for games. That's a consequence of your behavior. So we're still going and seeing brothers and sisters, though. Threatening the loss of placement. We cannot threaten the loss of a placement. We cannot put our finger in their face and tell them, you do it again, you're out of here. You know, any of those types of things. We had a kinship family that they were, come to find out later, and they were spanking the two younger children, and they told them if they ever told anybody, that CPS would take them away from them and place them in a foster home. That was threatening the loss of placement. So we cannot do that. Using sarcastic or cruel humor and verbal abuse. Remember, in the first night of behavior intervention, we said children don't understand sarcasm until adolescence, until they're teenagers. So we have to be careful with that one. And of course, no verbal abuse. Pinching, pulling hair, biting, flicking, or shaking a child. Hopefully nobody would do any of these to begin with. Pinching, we can't do like grandma and wrench up and pinch them on the back of the arm. You know, or if they're talking in church, we can't thump them on the back of the ear and the pew in front of us and tell them to be quiet. If they're biting everybody at daycare, we can't bite them back and show them how it feels. Usually if a child is biting, that is a sensory related issue. That's not a behavior. There's something sensory there. That's occupational therapy. That would help them with that. We cannot put anything on their mouth, such as soap or tape. We cannot, even if it's organic soap, we've had people ask that question, or putting things on like hot sauce on a pacifier, or bitter tasting fingernail polish on a thumb sucker. None of those types of things. Humiliating, shaming, ridiculing, rejecting, or yelling at the child. Now, this one to me is very subjective. If we told the child 4 times to come inside, it's time for dinner, and we're opening the door for the 5th time, of course, we're going to be louder. Our tone is going to be different. But all that it takes is a neighbor to call into the child abuse hotline and say, I have these neighbors that are foster parents, and all they do is scream at the kids all day long. We're going to have an investigation. So we just got to make sure that it's not threatening. You know, when we raise our voice, it's attention seeking. We've told them 4 times. Now we're showing them we mean business. I need you to come in the house right now. And there's no threats behind that. So that's kind of what they're looking for there. Subjecting a child to abusive or profane language. You know, we've got to watch our mouths, and sometimes it comes out accidentally. Hitting our toe on a baseboard, we may let it slip in front of the kids, you know, but we cannot use it at or in front of the children. Placing a child in a dark room, bathroom, or closet. Hopefully nobody would ever do this to begin with. It's abusive. But we also have to remember children's trauma histories. There's a lot of children in foster care prior to coming into care that were locked in bedrooms, bathrooms, and closets. That might have been their babysitter. Mom and dad had to go to work, and the child didn't qualify for daycare, so they shut the door and locked them in their bedroom for their day, or in a bathroom, or they put them to bed at 9 o'clock at night, and mom and dad went out partying and came home at 5 o'clock the next morning. Usually, how these get called in is a neighbor that can hear the kids crying and all, and they call the police or CPS, and that's how they become involved. So if we had a child and grounding a child to their bedroom, or if they did something wrong, we said, go to your bedroom, think about what you just said or what you just did, and then I'm going to come talk to you and we're going to process this. That's 100% acceptable. But for a child that has been locked in a bedroom, a closet, or a bathroom, if we say, go to your bedroom and think about what you just did, we're going to ignite a trigger, a trauma history for them. And so that's where we may get a meltdown, talking back, being defiant, falling on the ground, because we've activated that trauma trigger. So for that child, we may want to say, we're going to turn the television off, go sit on the couch and think about what you just said or what you just did, and then we're going to talk about it. So that would be a better course of action for that child. Requiring a child to remain silent or inactive for inappropriate long periods of time. Jokingly, I say good luck with this, but seriously, we cannot make them be silent for an entire day. I had a friend once that her stepfather, she had 121 words a day. That once she used up those 120 words, she was not allowed to speak again. That's unacceptable. So that's, we cannot do those types of things. Confining a child to a high-chair, car seat, box, or other similar furniture as a course of discipline. Now, if that child is 2 years old, they're running all over the house, we need them to be still for 5 minutes so that we can finish getting dinner ready. We put the child in their high chair, we give them a little cup of Cheerios, we turn on Coco Melon, Blues Clues, Paw Patrol, Blippi, whatever it is. We make it a more structured activity time and redirection. That's okay. It's not as a form of discipline that we're strapping them in, locking them in to anything. Denying a child their basic rights. We review that in pre-service 3 in normalcy, where we go through, they have the right to have clothes that match our crazy Texas weather, where it's 80 degrees 1 minute and 30 degrees the next. They have the right to 3 meals a day, the right to second helpings, the right to snacks in between, the right to call their case manager, their CPS worker, lawyer that represents them, their CLASA, that is their right to call them and do it in privacy, to go outside or to go to their bedroom and shut the door while they have those phone calls. So there's many things like that in regarding child's rights. Withholding food that meets the child's nutritional requirements. We can never send a child to bed without dinner. We cannot deny them that. Best rule of thumb, guys, is we do not use food as a reward or a consequence. We probably sometimes do it without thinking about it. We had such a good day today. Let's go get that Dairy Queen Blizzard, that yogurt or whatever it is, ice cream. But we should not use food as a reward or a consequence based on that child's past history of neglect. So kind of be cognizant of that. And again, we could never deny them food before bed. Using or threatening the use of restraint as a disciplinary technique. We're going to talk about that later tonight in Behavior Intervention Part 2. A restraint is meant to protect that child when they are in imminent danger of substantial bodily harm to themselves or others. That's when we restrain a child. Not because we said, go to your room, and they turn around and said, screw you. We can't put them in a restraint and drag them down the hallway. That would be an inappropriate use of restraint. And then jumping down to our last page, just the one we want to touch on here, restrictions of activities or other than school or chores, which will be imposed on a child for more than 14 days. We cannot take away things for more than 14 days. Kind of give you a little backstory on this. Well, discipline is meant to educate. If 2 children are fighting over a toy, we take the toy, we put the toy in timeout. We taught to them about sharing, compromise, and taking turns. Then we take the toy down and we practice that. If we take that toy away and put it on top of the refrigerator and forget about it for 30 days, then take it down, we missed a whole learning opportunity. That child now has forgot about it. They moved on in life, and they didn't learn anything from having that toy taken away from them because they were fighting over it. Also, it's kind of meant to keep adults from being mean and vindictive. Kind of a little story. There was a child once, she was 18 months old when her mother passed away, and her father went on to remarry. When fast forward, she was 14 years old. She was being interviewed by the pediatrician. And the pediatrician said, "What is the worst thing that happens to you at home?" And she said, "Timeout." She said, "Really? What does timeout look like in your house?" And she said, "Well, it lasts for 6 months." She said, "Wow, what do you do to get timeout for 6 months in your house?" And she said, "I'll walk into the living room while they're having family time." Guys, that's not discipline. That's meanness and vindictiveness. That's a real life Cinderella story. The least amount of time she would get was 2 weeks, and that was for using the wrong fork at the dinner table. This stepmom was just looking for reasons to be mean and vindictive to her. And so that's why one of the reasons too, we cannot take these items away from them for more than 2 weeks. Now, especially as our kids get older, sometimes it gets a little bit more harder and harder to discipline. If we've exhausted everything, we've tried timeouts, revoking privileges, and grounding to their room, and to the house, and they can't go outside with friends, and whatever it may be. Electronics is usually the shot to the heart. If we take away electronics, that usually stops everything. But if we've tried everything, and we want to take that tablet or that phone away till the end of the 6 weeks because they were skipping school, they're failing, they're doing all these things, and nothing seems to be working, we can try that to see if it works. We do need to notify CPS, CASA, to let them know, this is going to be longer than 14 days. We're not encroaching on a child's right, and we need to review that to make sure that is encroaching on that right. They're taking things away from 14 days. So guys, that's the policy. That is our discipline policy. Again, we review that on night one. Want to just recap it, talk a little bit more in detail about it tonight. So that concludes this little portion. The next portion is going to be behavior intervention part 2, the PowerPoint, which is grounded and based in TBRI, trust-based relational intervention. So hang tight, and we'll be with you shortly on that portion of the training.